Hello and welcome. It's Mitzi Wyman here, and it's a new year, and I wanted to share with you one of my favourite change models because these days we're living through so much change. It's very hard to navigate that and to lead teams when there's so much fallout from the environmental, political, and economic challenges that we're facing. The model comes from the work of Elisabeth Kubler-Ross and her work on grief. And Elisabeth Kubler-Ross was a psychiatrist in the 1960s, and she explored what people went through when they were giving a diagnosis of a terminal illness. And over the years, management consultants have come to realize that her grief model really applies to any sort of change that we're going through, whether that's divorce, a change of job, a new restructuring in an organization. We experience loss and grief sometimes as we go through this change cycle. So as I say, I wanted to share that with you and invite you to share the model with your teams and to sit down with them and reflect and think about what they can do to make sure that any changes you're seeking to implement this year can be as successful as possible. So let's take a look at the change cycle. So as we can see, the person at the beginning here is wondering whether they can cope with this change. It all seems a bit overwhelming. There's that sense of anxiety, wondering what it will mean for them. At the same time, we may have others on the team who are really excited. Finally, something is going to happen, only to discover a little way down the line that perhaps it wasn't quite what they were expecting. And as I say, people experience fear. They wonder what's going to happen to them as with all this change that's going on. They might experience anger because it was unexpected, unplanned for. They may feel a sense of betrayal because the future they had imagined is different. And so there is that anger. And for those who have been given the task of implementing the change or designing the new strategy, there can be a sense of guilt because people may resent them for it. Perhaps there have been redundancies. And so that can be very hard for those people. And at the lowest point, people experience depression and at that time perhaps choose to leave the organisation. Over time, though, as people become more familiar with the new changes, there's a gradual acceptance, and maybe it's not so bad. They can start to see themselves in this new future, and indeed get excited as this chap here is as they move forward. But of course, the change cycle is cyclical. It's not linear. We're always somewhere on a change cycle, and people react differently. Some people will move through it quite quickly. Others, it will take some time, and the intensity of the feelings may be that much stronger. So it's important to be aware of that as you're going through it. What I suggest is that you perhaps use this model with your team and consider these questions. With your team, discuss a time when you personally experienced one of the stages of the cycle. How did you feel during that stage? How did you move on to the next stage? Or did you get stuck in a particular stage for a longer period of time? What helped or hindered your progress through the stages? This model is so helpful in helping us to understand what's going on for people, what the emotional responses are to the changes that you're seeking to implement. And if you're transparent with your team, if you sit down and discuss this with them, then you're much more able to lead them through change before the next cycle. Well, I hope you found that introduction to Elisabeth Kubler-Ross's grief cycle helpful in leading through change. It's the first in a series of 3 videos which I've created on leading through change. The second looks at Rosabeth Moss-Kanter's work on understanding resistance to change. And this is really powerful in helping us understand the sources of that resistance and what lies behind the emotions we saw in Elisabeth Kubler-Ross's work. In the third video, I'm looking at Patrick Lencioni's work and his fabulous model, which really helps us to understand the 5 dysfunctions of a team and how you can create trust and transparency in your teams, which of course means that you're able to lead change more effectively. If you'd like to have access to these videos, then do please contact me at my website, mitziwyman.com. I look forward to hearing from you. Bye bye.